Good afternoon, United Capital Management clients and clients of the Redneck Yacht Fund. And
I want to introduce John Deaton and explain why I'm having him on today. I'm going to highlight the introduction. John is an attorney, asbestos attorney, is what you start out as, and you still practice in that area, but also a crypto attorney. And reason I got to know John so well is watching both on Facebook and X. You know, following his tweets and videos when he was representing XRP, and we'll get into that. Basically, jumped into the cryptography world, and I'll let him give you the history. But he also ran for Senate against a very famous senator in this country. About the whole country knows Elizabeth Warren, and I'm of course pushing him to run again, and mainly because of his being young and advanced in technology, I guess I'm going to put it simply that way, and understands the problems of this country. And but before we dive into all of that, I think my listeners that aren't familiar with you, I would love for you to tell your story and talk about your book. And for anybody that wants a copy, I'll probably send out at least 30 of them. My treat, first 30 people that respond and want a copy of your book, will order it and send it to them. So, John, you want to tell us a little bit about your book and your upbringing? That's a great story.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, the book's called Food Stamp Warrior. It's a memoir. I wrote it predominantly beginning actually in March of 2020. COVID had shut down, but my mother had unfortunately passed away, and her passing away caused some issues for me to deal with. And so I wrote the book as a cathartic exercise because I learned a valuable lesson, Chad. I learned that, you can decide that you're not going to be a victim, and you can go through certain traumatic events in your life, and you can overcome them. But if you don't deal with them, they can sneak up on you when you least expect it. You could have money in the bank like I did, and you could be on paper. There's great success from rags to riches, but that unexamined trauma sometimes can sneak up on you and find you. And that's what happened to me. My mother was a single mother of welfare and food stamps, and I was living in a place called Highland Park, Detroit. And if you look it up, you'll see that in the last 50 years, it's been ranked top 5 worst neighborhoods across America, and highest death percentage per capita, things like that. My father was a deadbeat, degenerate gambler who sort of abandoned us in that absolute, shithole, to be blunt. Predominantly black neighborhood. There was only 3 white students in my school district, and so to give you an idea of when I say violence, so people don't think I'm exaggerating, at 6 years old, I watched my mother get stabbed. Someone robbed her, stabbed her in the back. She almost died in front of me at 6 years old. Unfortunately, at 9 years old, a child predator from the neighborhood, a serial child rapist, began raping me between 9 and 11 years old, and told me that if my mother or anyone found out, he would kill her. And as you can imagine, after watching her at 6 years old, 3 years prior to that, almost die, it had a pretty chilling impact on me. And so my first day of high school, I had a 38 shoved in my mouth and the hammer cocked. And the next day, I went and got a gun, and I was headed back to high school my second day. And I sat at a bench, and I realized that I'm probably going to use that gun because I'd already, learned how to fight. And I obviously defended myself, and I was going to end up in prison or dead. And so that day I didn't go back to school with the gun, and I became a high school dropout. And I was a high school dropout for almost 4 months. And I'm going to tell you, Chad, what poverty does to people. And one of my reasons for success is my hatred of poverty and what it can do to the human spirit and the human mind. But my mother caught me crying because I couldn't find a high school. This is 1981, so there's no Google to like search nearby high schools and do things like that. So I've been trying to find a high school that I could go to that would maybe allow me to make payments or something. My mother caught me crying and said, "Why are you so upset?" And I said, "Because I need to go to college. I want to go to college, and I got to graduate high school, and I can't find a high school." And my mom, God bless her, who's my hero, she put her arms around me, trying to console me, and said, "Well, I'm sorry, son, but college just isn't for people like us." Basically, white trash, living in the ghetto, food stamps, welfare, that kind of environment. And on that day, I decided that I would somehow find my way. And I got lucky. I found a private high school, Catholic high school in the suburbs of Detroit, and a principal who felt bad for me, but Chad, he made me earn it. He said, after I told him my story, he said, the tuition is $1,400. That's 1981. It might as well have been 14,000 to me. But he said he'll cut it to 700, but I had to maintain a 3.5 or above. I had to play 2 sports. I had to be active in the church. That way it gets me off the streets. And he gave me my shot. And at 14 years old, I began 18-hour days. I found a job washing dishes and waiting tables. And make a long story short, I was the only person in my family to graduate high school, went on to college, went on to the Marine Corps. One of the other bad traumatic events I didn't share, my best friend, who was 5 years older than me, he had protected me in that neighborhood. He did happen to be a drug dealer, but he protected me. He took a liking to me as 5 years older. He died in my arms after a drive-by. So, that kind of trauma is what my childhood was like. I go on to law school, realize that I'm going to be the American dream.
I'm sure we could spend 2 hours talking about your neighborhood and everything you've seen, and all of the questions I would have regarding that. I'm stopping you to ask you what the 2 sports were.
Football and basketball.
Football and basketball. Okay.
Football and basketball.
Good shit. What other thing I want to ask about that? Where was your father in all of this? You referenced your mother.
Yeah, my father was unfortunately a degenerate gambler. I would see him once in a great while. I could go a year without seeing him. Got to know him after I graduated college. Took a break between college and law school, a little bit better, but he suffered from a gambling addiction that was of the worst kind. And so, unfortunately, that addiction is what caused him to be blunt, a deadbeat dad, who sort of left us there stranded. But that's what addiction does, to some people. My dad, he was a guy that worked as a janitor at R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, became an executive, but because he was a gambler, he got into some loan sharks in Kentucky. They put a contract on him, so he grabbed my mom. I wasn't born yet. He grabbed my mom and my sibling and said, "We're going to Detroit to the automotive industry." Then he got a job as like an entry-level job. Then he becomes this big shot supervisor. So he's a very talented person. I could write a book about my dad as wasted talent and much smarter than me. And unfortunately, that addiction caused him to abandon his family. So,
is he alive today, or do you know?
No, he passed away about 12 years ago.
Okay, gotcha.
12
Another
years.
question I want to ask with the book out, and I've got to get it read. I got to confess to you, I started to. I can't remember whether is it on Audible.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I have it on.
I might have downloaded on there. That's what I normally do, and then download it when I hear about it. And then either
you have a few things to do every day.
I'm sure. Exactly. But has anybody ever reached out to you like Netflix?
I've had people that just encourage me. A couple independent producers have read it that they're interested in pursuing it. I haven't really pursued it, but I can tell you this: the book is very raw, very unedited. I made a decision. And matter of fact, when I ran for office, it was a good thing, Chad, because in that book, I admit to every bad thing or bad decision I've ever made in my life. I
Right.
talked about how I hustled on the street and sold marijuana, and then would take the $50 I made in selling marijuana to a crackhead, and I would get $100 in food stamps for the $50 in cash. Then I'd bring my mom the $100 in food stamps, and I'd lie to her and tell her I found it so that it would help her, buy groceries and stuff. And so things like that to physical fights and violence that I engaged in. I learned that I was acting out from the child rapes and stuff. When I got divorced, I became very promiscuous, all consensual, but I write in the book that I engaged in a coke-fueled sex bender that would make Scarface, look like chump change. And so I talked, and what I was doing is I was acting out, like I wasn't, dealing with that trauma that had happened to me. And so it's very entertaining. I would tell you, you're not going to be bored. You're going to be shocked that I ran for public office after admitting all that stuff.
Well, so yeah, when you're running for Senate again, or maybe even a bigger office someday, you won't have if a Stormy Daniels was in your life, it's going to have been in the book.
Oh yeah. Well, the Democrats, Elizabeth Warren and them tried to take some shots at me about the book, but it fell short because I admitted I'm honest, I'm authentic, and I think that resonates with people. But at first they tried to call me a racist because I didn't edit the N-word. I spelled it out. I didn't put an asterisk. And if you read the book, you'll realize I'm the least kind of racist person you ever admit. I was just explaining dialogue. This is dialogue in my childhood, but they tried to, take shots at that, but it fell short. I think I'm very proud of the book because I've had grown men come up to me and tears in their eyes saying that something happened to them and they really didn't deal with it, and reading my story and me being so open about it. Because Chad, for 40 years, I didn't tell a soul. that had happened to me. And my mom died never knowing about that happened to me because I would never want to hurt her like that. And so when you hold something in like that for 40 years and then you write about it and you tell the world, it really is like freedom.
Free.
Yeah, it's free. And so people have come up to me, rape victims have emailed me about the book saying that it helped them get through things, stuff like that. So it's a book about never giving up and fighting for the life that you deserve. And it's okay to say, you know what? Some stuff happened to me. Guess what? I'm a scarred human being. I'm walking around. I got a little baggage, and it's okay because there's a lot of us in the same boat.
I'm going to come back to high school and Harvard, but I want to talk a little bit more about poverty. And I think I've shared with you before that what was probably obvious to you. Our home office is a little community of Salina, Kansas, in the middle of Kansas, and for most of my adult life, there was always one homeless person in this community, and everybody knew the name. Okay, that the name would change, the person would change, but you only see one or two, and the local merchants knew that person. And then I noticed driving to larger communities and working in larger communities. I travel a lot. The number of homeless, Wichita, Kansas City, and different markets, Fort Worth, wherever, increase. And I think this small community, I've heard recently that there's as many as 70. So prior to COVID, you wouldn't see any, and now they're all over this very clean, wealthy, small community. And I could talk about the Federal Reserve and make it a monetary issue, but I finally figured it out again. What seems so obvious, I feel like I was slow to the game, but when you Google it, I'd read 35,000 new homeless in America every year a few years ago, and that's nearly 500,000 a year. And what I figured out was, oh, this is what's causing it. They start off on opioids and cocaine and high-end drugs or whatever. They get addicted. They get to the point where they can't even afford crack, and then they're done.
Right.
And what's amazing is I've been in cities where somebody homeless approaches me and they actually carry on a very intelligent dialogue, and it's like they may have been an executive with some company and they're homeless now.
Right.
And so yeah, let's talk about the poverty statistics in this country that you're concerned about and passionate about. And when we in one of our times together, I mentioned 50% of the bottom 50% of this country is broke, and 3 men in technology have more wealth than the bottom 50%. So those, and that's a whole nother financial story. But you think the statistics higher than that? You had quoted 65% of people can't come with $500 or something like that.
Yeah. If
you
you
want to miss numbers.
No, it's 60% of Americans today living paycheck to paycheck. If they experience a $500 emergency, car breaks down, air conditioning goes out in the middle of a heat wave, something normal, where they can't afford it. They don't have $500. If you increase it, Chad, from 500 to 1,000, then you're hitting 68%. Almost 7 out of 10 of Americans today can't afford $1,000 emergency in their life. The wealth gap in this country, to me, is the biggest threat to our country. Then you can talk about climate change, you can talk about this other issue or that issue, but the biggest threat to me is the difference between the haves and the have-nots. The wealthier are getting wealthier, and the poor are getting poorer, and it's at a level that I think threatens the fabric of our society. And we've got to implement policies that address that. I live. You'll shake your head for sure. In Massachusetts, they have these rules that protect unaccredited investors, right? The accredited investor rule, where you got to be worth $1 million, not including your house, or make $300,000 a year to engage in to own private equity or invest. Well, in Massachusetts in 1980, they decided to take it further and say, you know what? There's this company going public, this tech company, and we think it's too risky for regular people. Only hedge funds and rich people can own it. So even when it IPOs and becomes a public company, we're not going to allow you, regular people, to own it to protect you. That company was Apple. And a $1,000 investment would be worth $1.7 million, to give you a perspective. So the government seems to protect people from wealth. And so we have to address that. So my hate, I was on Fox Business. We were talking about the book on Charles Payne's show, Making Money. And he asked me, he goes, what are one of the things that drove you? And I said, it's my hatred of poverty. My mother is one of the strongest people that I've ever met in my life, to keep her children together, to fight every day the way she fought. Even though there were days when we went hungry, and she kept fighting, but poverty had told her that she was this subclass person, and that her and her children were just not meant for college, because that's not in the cards for people like us. That kind of damage that poverty does to the beautiful soul like my mother is what drove me.
I need to have a 3-hour interview with you sometime and put that out. And has Joe Rogan ever reached out to you?
No, I don't know. I don't know, Joe. If he read the book, he'd probably be, interested. I was I was afraid. I thought, well, the book was so raw that and so unedited that, would it, and there's some depressing things in there, like someone telling you that there's raped as a child and sort of walking you through some of the scenes. A very small chapter in the book, but I don't hold back. I share the experience. And then I was questioning whether people would get my humor, because I want the book there. But most people do, and they say that, you go from crying one chapter to laughing in the next chapter. And so, because I do share some pretty funny moments through my life that happen that I think are universally funny to most people.
I'll shorten and expedite what should be a long story, but and maybe for another time. But Trump making drug cartels, terrorist organizations, that's the start on the drug end.
Agreed.
Poverty turns to drug and drug dealing and things like that. But from the financial side of thing, I want to roll into talking about how crypto and especially Bitcoin can change the poverty in this country. And we have the U.S. debt clock downloaded, okay? And you won't be able to see it very well, but we told our clients a little over a year ago that by this February we'd roll over 37 trillion, and we were a little off because we just went over 37 trillion last week. But it takes 120% of our tax receipts to pay the interest on the national debt, all our entitlement, Social Security and so on, and defense spending, okay, if you can trust that 120%. So you know that it's the same in Massachusetts as it is in Kansas and Texas and the markets we serve, Tennessee. You got a bunch of grumpy old retired men sitting in a coffee shop talking about how our government needs to be more responsible and not spend money. Okay, well, between Elon Musk, Palantir, Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, they found a few billion, but they didn't find 5 trillion in there to send things the other direction. And when I explain to people, we can't stop spending, it goes to your 65%, the word's austerity. If we turn towards austerity in this country, I explained to our clients, you're going to have to put a 12-foot electric fence around your property, okay, and have armed machine guards, because the people are going to starve. We can't stop. We can't practice austerity. If we default on our debt, the people think, okay, average person, doesn't that just affect China and Japan, and we default and they have to figure it out? No, 71% of this country owns the debt of this country, from banks to retirees and individuals. And so here we go, the big, beautiful bill. We're going to print money, okay, and hopefully expand infrastructure and all of that. But I want this to segue into, stop sharing the screen, segue into how did you, we'll have to come back to finish high school. And
okay,
real quick, how did you get into Harvard? Okay.
Well, I didn't get into Harvard. I went to law school in New England,
Okay.
but I'm proud to say that I beat out Harvard, BC, Boston College, Boston University, and other law schools. The Marine Corps chose me to represent Massachusetts for the 1994 judge advocate law contract. They only give one out. So
Oh, wow.
I couldn't afford Harvard, but I'm proud that I beat them out to be a Marine.
Okay. So
That's my Harvard story.
So the Marine Corps put you in law school. That was-
I got some deferments and stuff, but I went in between second and third law school. So I came out of law school with student loan debt, like a lot of Americans. I just wanted to give back because I realized from first graduate high school in my family to college to law school, I knew with my work ethic, and I believe in this great country of ours, Chad. If you have talent and you couple that talent with an incredible work ethic, you'll make it. It may take you longer than you expected, like it did me, right? It took me a decade longer than I thought it would, but you'll eventually be successful. And so it was my way of honoring this great country that gave me an opportunity to go from rags to riches, and to go from food stamps to serving the Marine Corps and running for U.S. Senate against someone as entrenched as Elizabeth Warren and standing on that stage with her. And so,
did you go to the Marine Corps in San Diego? Or
I went to Quantico, officer candidate school in Quantico. I was stationed first time in Yuma, Arizona on the border. And then I went to Newport and taught at the Naval Justice School and taught Naval War College.
Thank you for your service. My dad tried to get into Vietnam, flunked his physical. he wanted out of poverty, Southwest, extreme poverty. He's got extreme poverty story. But all his brothers served, our grandfathers served, my grandfather, my mother's, and along the lineage of that. What's interesting is Ronald Reagan was president in 1980 when I was 10 years old till the time I was 18 years old, and there was never going to be another need for military, right? It was kind of a real peaceful time, so it wasn't on my mind. But I was fortunate enough to go see my nephew graduate, San Diego Marine Corps, and after that weekend, I thought every American needs to go to Marine Corps graduation. It was very, very good for my soul. So just amazing. So take that poverty into cryptography. One of my favorite things to say is Bitcoin is the world's first ever largest barter system. Allow 7 billion people to control commerce instead of a few white guys between New York and Washington, D.C. And this printing press and I can't wait to introduce you to this guy right here, Lawrence Lepard. But talk about was it from the law angle, or who orange pilled you, and how'd this happen?
I heard about Bitcoin, and so I decided to read the white paper. I wish I could say it was 2012, 13, or 14. It was 2016. And to be honest with you, the first thing I thought about was poverty and my mom, because my mother received welfare checks. The banks, she couldn't hold a minimum deposit. We needed the money. So they'd hit her with those fees, right? And so she'd end up going to the check cashing stores that you see all across the inner cities of America. And they would charge 15%. And my mom, I remember being 7 years old, she would beg them, please take 10% because we needed the money. Chad, when I got to college, I tried to send my mom some money. I'd go through Western Union. They charge 12%. So when I thought of Bitcoin, read Bitcoin, I was like, wow, you cut out the banks, you cut out the MoneyGrams, the Western Unions of the world, peer-to-peer. This is beautiful. I thought about capitalism. I thought about a woman in Nigeria could make straw hats. If she has a smartphone and internet connection, she can accept Bitcoin, and we avoid the intermediaries. It could lift people out of poverty. And it's like you said, anyone can do it. And so I became 100% orange pill, went full in. As you know, you go down the rabbit hole, you watch every YouTube thing about Bitcoin and this, you get fascinated with who Satoshi is and all that kind of stuff. And I'm such a believer in the tech and everything you just described that when I ran for Senate, I had to make financial disclosures, and I declared that 80% of my net worth is in Bitcoin.
How did you end up getting a hold of the Brad Garling house? And
I also I owned some XRP and some Ethereum, predominantly Bitcoin, but XRP would process in 3 to 5 seconds peer-to-peer. I was like, wow, this is amazing tech. And so I owned that. Then the SEC sued a company called Ripple that is associated with XRP, but they engaged in gross overreach. They basically said, even if you're not associated with Ripple and you own XRP, you own an illegal asset in America, something that had never been done before. And so I got upset, pissed off, sort of like you Texans, once in a while you get, pissed off. And
Kansas.
Kansas, I mean.
Yeah, that's all right.
I mean, Cowboy Ranch.
We have an office in Texas. We're good.
All right. And so I sued the government, the SEC, on behalf of XRP holders, and Phenomena took over 75,000 across the world, joined me. We went into court. The judge named me as amicus counsel, and we won. The judge declared XRPs not a security, it's not illegal, and she cited the affidavits I submitted in court in my brief, and sort of became a little bit of you know, light in crypto because of that, I guess is one way to say it.
We just created, all I need to do is rewatch this. And we just created additional 4 hours of content. There's so many directions we could go with the things that we just covered briefly, but you got to get to another call.
I do. But listen, I'd love to come back and talk. I'm a big Chad fan.
Well, thank you. Love to have you back. And your story. I'm gonna Huck, Kansas in this. I was actually born in Dodge City, Kansas, raised in a little community called Montezuma, Kansas. I think my dad had, as a farmer, possibly had taxable income 1 year, okay, of like $40,000.
Right.
Accumulated some assets over time, but there was never any cash flow. Okay. So, by the tax return for sure, and the wealth, they would suggest that possibly I could argue that, I don't know, we were probably near poverty level. I know he grew up in poverty. Okay. But I just want to, as I hear your story, I grew up so privileged, incredible. Today it'd be in the 1% probably to have a mother and a father, but it's just as important to be in rural America and have that community and that safety. And quite frankly, it's this printing machine and this backwards, upside down economy that's pushed everybody to the city,
Yep.
And so I think rural America wins with crypto and someday has a voice again and a vote. So that's a whole another story in itself. So anyway, lost my father in 2005, but I might call my mother and tell her I love her right now. You choked me up a little bit. So,
all right.
God bless you.
God bless you. I'll talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Friends and family, before I get started with a very special guest today, I want to remind you all to follow me on X. It's Chad Koehn 2. Be sure and follow me on X, and more important, follow Adam Livingston and Michael Saylor on X to understand where we're going. But then I'll add another person, follow John Deaton on X. John, what is your X handle?
John E. Deaton 1. John E. Deaton 1.
Okay. So I obviously followed John on X and was lucky enough to meet him in person last May we had dinner in Boston. And